The outcast in the rain, Marcus Webb, a cargo pilot, discovers Seraphine, a grieving alien widow, collapsed near his landing site during a storm. Her people, the Velthani, have exiled her for refusing to undergo the traditional memory wipe after her husband's death. Marcus takes her aboard his ship despite the risks. Part 2. Shelter from the storm as they travel together. Seraphine slowly opens up about her loss and exile. Marcus shares his own painful past, the death of his family in a colony collapse. They begin to understand each other's grief, finding unexpected comfort in their shared loneliness. Part 3. The hunters pursue Velthani. Enforcers track Seraphine. Believing her grief makes her dangerous to their emotionless society. Marcus must navigate through asteroid fields and abandoned stations to keep her safe, while their bond deepens into something neither expected. Part 4. The choice. Between worlds cornered by her pursuers, Seraphine must decide whether to surrender and forget her pain and Marcus, or fight for the right to feel. Marcus stands by her, showing the enforcers what love and loyalty truly mean. Part 5. A new beginning after escaping together. Marcus and Seraphine find refuge on a remote colony where humans and aliens live in harmony. They build a new life, proving that love transcends species and that remembering those we've lost makes us stronger, not weaker. Part 1. The outcast in the rain. The rain fell in silver sheets across the landing platform, each drop hissing as it struck the hot metal of Marcus Webb's cargo ship. He pulled his jacket collar higher against the cold wind that swept across the outer rim station, a forgotten outpost on the edge of civilized space. The delivery had been routine medical supplies for the colonists who scratched out their existence on this harsh world. Now he just wanted to refuel and leave before the storm got worse. That's when he saw her. She was collapsed against a cargo container, her form barely visible through the downpour. At first, Marcus thought she might be human, but as he approached, his breath caught. Her skin had an ethereal quality, almost translucent with faint patterns of bioluminescence that pulsed weakly beneath the surface. Her hair was long and dark, but streaked with strands that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She wore tattered robes that might have once been ceremonial, now soaked through and clinging to her trembling body. Marcus knelt beside her, his hand hovering uncertainly. He had seen many alien species in his years, piloting freight routes, but he had never seen one of her kind before. Her breathing was shallow, and when her eyes fluttered open, they were entirely black-like, looking into deep space itself, with tiny points of light that resembled distant stars. "Please," she whispered, her voice carrying a melodic quality even in her weakened state. The universal translator in his ear converted her words. "Do not send me back to them?" "Who?" Marcus asked gently, already shrugging off his jacket to drape it over her shoulders. "Who are you running from?" "My own people," she said, her star-filled eyes filling with something that looked like tears, though they glowed faintly as they traced down her cheeks. "The Velthani. They cast me out because I refused to forget him." Marcus didn't understand, but he could hear the raw pain in her voice. He had heard that tone before in his own voice, on the darkest nights when he remembered his wife and daughter lost in the colony collapse 5 years ago. It was the sound of grief so deep it became part of you. "Can you stand?" he asked, offering his hand. She looked at it for a long moment, as if the gesture itself was foreign to her. Then slowly she placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool to the touch, smooth like polished stone, and he felt a faint tingle of energy pass between them. He helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight as they stumbled toward his ship. The cargo vessel wasn't much to look at, a battered freighter called the Wandering, star that had seen better decades, but it was home, and it was safe. As they climbed the ramp, Marcus glanced around nervously. Taking on passengers without proper documentation was risky, especially aliens who might be wanted by their own governments. But he couldn't leave her in the rain dot inside the ship. Warmth enveloped them. Marcus guided her to the small medical bay and helped her onto the examination table. She was shivering violently now, her bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically. He grabbed thermal blankets and wrapped them around her, then activated the heating system. "What's your name?" he asked softly, preparing a mild stimulant that should work across most carbon-based physiologies. "Seraphine," she replied, her voice barely audible. "And you are?" "Marcus Webb, captain of this fine vessel, if you can call it that." He managed a small smile as he administered the medication. "You said your people cast you out. Why?" Seraphine's eyes closed, and for a moment Marcus thought she had lost consciousness. But then she spoke, her words heavy with sorrow. "Among the Velthani, when a bonded partner dies, we undergo the cleansing. It removes all memories of the deceased, all emotions tied to them. We believe grief is a poison that spreads through our collective consciousness. But I refused. I wanted to remember Talvin, my husband. I wanted to keep loving him, even though he is gone." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He understood that desire all too well, the need to hold on to memories, even when they hurt. He had spent years trying to preserve every detail of his family's faces, their laughter, their warmth. "So they exiled you for wanting to remember?" The injustice of it made his voice harder than he intended. "They say I am contaminated, that my grief makes me dangerous." Seraphine opened her eyes again, and Marcus saw not just pain in those stellar depths, but defiance. "They sent enforcers to bring me back for forced cleansing. I ran." The ship's proximity alarm chimed softly. Marcus glanced at the monitor and saw two sleek vessels entering the station's airspace designs he didn't recognize. But their aggressive approach pattern was unmistakable. "Are those your enforcers?" he asked. Seraphine sat up quickly, ignoring her weakness. "Yes, you must leave me here. If they find you harboring me, they will consider you contaminated as well." Marcus looked at her frightened face, at the determination mixed with resignation in her extraordinary eyes. He thought about his own losses, about the emptiness that had defined his life for 5 years. He thought about what it meant to truly remember someone you loved. "Strap in," he said firmly, moving toward the cockpit. "We're leaving." "But I'm not leaving you to forget someone you love," Marcus said, his hands already flying over the launch controls. "Hold on tight." The wandering star rocketed away from the station just as the Velthani vessels completed their docking sequence. Marcus pushed the engines hard, feeling the ship shudder around them as they broke atmosphere. Behind them, the station's traffic control was shouting warnings and demands that he ignored, focusing instead on plotting a jump to hyperspace. "They will follow us," Seraphine said from the co-pilot's seat where she had strapped herself in. The color was slowly returning to her bioluminescent patterns, creating shifting constellations across her skin. "The enforcers are relentless." "Then we'll be more relentless," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across the navigation console. "I know these outer rim routes better than anyone. We'll lose them in the scattered belt." The scattered belt was a debris field left over from a planetary collision millions of years ago, a maze of asteroids, ice chunks, and radiation pockets that made navigation treacherous. Most pilots avoided it. Marcus had made it his specialty during his years of running cargo to forgotten colonies as they entered hyperspace with a flash of distorted light. Marcus finally allowed himself to breathe. The immediate danger had passed, but he knew it was far from over. He turned to look at Seraphine properly, for the first time since they'd left the station in the soft light of the cockpit. She was hauntingly beautiful. The patterns beneath her translucent skin moved like slow waves, and her black eyes reflected the stars streaming past outside. But it was the sadness in those eyes that struck him most. a sadness he recognized intimately. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have risked much for a stranger." "Maybe I'm tired of strangers," Marcus replied, surprised by his own honesty. "It's been a long time since I've had a real conversation with anyone. Most of my interactions these days involve cargo manifests and fuel prices." A ghost of a smile touched Seraphine's lips. "You live alone by choice?" "Not at first." Marcus stood and moved to the small galley, pulling out 2 pouches of heated rations. "I lost my family 5 years ago. Colony collapse on Europa Station. Faulty life support system. By the time rescue arrived, 300 people were gone, including my wife, Emma, and our daughter, Claire. She was 7. He hadn't meant to share that. He rarely spoke about them with anyone. But something about Seraphine's openness about her own loss made it easier. "I am sorry," Seraphine said, and Marcus could hear genuine empathy in her voice. "The Valthani would say you should undergo cleansing as well, that carrying such pain serves no purpose." "What do you say?" Marcus asked, handing her a ration pouch. Seraphine studied the food curiously before taking a small bite. Her expression suggested it wasn't entirely pleasant, but she continued eating. "I say that the pain is proof they existed, that they mattered. Talvin and I were bonded for 12 cycles, what you would call years. He was a musician, creating harmonies that could make stone weep. When the illness took him, he asked me to never forget the songs we shared. How can I honor that request if I allow them to erase him from my mind?" Marcus sat back down, his own food forgotten. "That's beautiful. And terrible. I'm sorry you had to choose between your memories and your home. Home is not a place when everyone there insists you become someone else," Seraphine said. "The Valthani are a practical people. We evolved without strong emotional responses, valuing logic and collective harmony above all. Those who develop deep feelings are seen as evolutionary throwbacks, mistakes to be corrected." She looked down at her hands, watching the light patterns pulse. "Talvin was like me, an aberration who felt too much. Perhaps that is why we found each other. For 12 cycles, we were happy, living on the margins of society, creating art and music that our people called wasteful. And then he died, and they expected me to erase him as if he had never been." Marcus reached across the space between them and gently took her hand. The cool smoothness of her skin no longer felt strange, just different. "You don't have to erase anyone. Not while you're on my ship." Seraphine's eyes widened slightly, and Marcus noticed her bioluminescent patterns brightened. "You truly do not mind harboring a fugitive?" "I've been running from my own ghosts for 5 years," Marcus said. "Maybe it's time I stopped running and started standing for something. Besides, anyone who fights that hard to remember love deserves protection." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, eating their rations and watching the stars stream by. The ship's computer chimed, indicating they were approaching their exit point from hyperspace. Marcus checked their position and smiled. "The scattered belt. We'll hide here for a while. Let your enforcers chase their tails, trying to track us through standard routes." He paused, then added, "There's a small cabin behind the cargo bay. It's not much, but it has a real bed and a fresher unit. You should rest. Will you rest as well?" Seraphine asked, concern evident in her voice. "Someone needs to monitor for pursuit," Marcus replied. "Then I will stay here with you." Seraphine settled back into the co-pilot's seat, her decision clearly final. "You saved my life. The least I can do is help watch for danger." Marcus wanted to argue, but the truth was, he didn't want to be alone. For the first time in years, another presence on his ship didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like companionship. As they entered the scattered belt, navigating between massive asteroids and glittering ice fields, they began to talk. Really talk. Seraphine told him about Valthani culture, About the cities of crystal that grew from living stone, about the music Talvin had created using harmonic resonance chambers. Marcus shared stories of Earth, of his childhood in the mountains, of how he'd met Emma at a spaceport cafe, both of them waiting for delayed flights. "She spilled coffee on my jacket," Marcus said, laughing at the memory. "Then she tried to clean it with napkins and somehow made it worse. I asked her to dinner to make up for the ruined jacket. We were married 6 months later." "Love at first accident," Serafini said, and there was actual amusement in her voice. "Something like that." Marcus smiled, but then his expression grew more serious. "Do you know what the hardest part is? Not the big moments, those I've learned to handle. It's the small things. Seeing a father and daughter at a station, and remembering how Claire used to hold my hand. Or hearing someone laugh, like Emma used to laugh. Those moments catch me off guard." Seraphine nodded slowly. "For me, it is silence. Talvin filled our home with music constantly. Now, the quiet feels wrong, like the universe is holding its breath. Sometimes I create small harmonics with my voice, trying to remember his melodies, but it is not the same. Could you teach me?" Marcus asked impulsively. "One of his songs?" Seraphine looked startled, then touched. "You would want to learn Valthani music?" "I think remembering together might be easier than remembering alone," Marcus said softly. They had been in the scattered belt for 3 days when the enforcers found them. Marcus had grown too comfortable, letting his guard down as he and Seraphine spent their time talking, sharing meals, and yes, as she had promised, learning fragments of Talvin's music. The haunting melodies she taught him required harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't quite reproduce, but Marcus tried anyway, and Seraphine seemed to appreciate his efforts. The proximity alarm shattered their peace early in the morning cycle. 2 ships, emerging from behind a large asteroid, moving with predatory precision directly toward the wandering star. "They found us," Seraphine whispered, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with distress. "How is that possible?" Marcus was already at the controls, initiating emergency maneuvers. "They must have better tracking technology than I thought." "Hold on." The wandering star wasn't built for combat or speed, but Marcus knew how to make her dance. He dove beneath an asteroid cluster, then pulled up sharply, using the gravitational pulls of larger rocks to slingshot them forward. The Valthani ships followed with unnerving accuracy. "They are using a biological tracer," Seraphine said, her voice tight with realization. "Before exile, all Valthani are tagged at the molecular level. It allows our collective to maintain awareness of each individual. I thought the signal would fade in time, but they must have amplified their sensors. Can we block it?" Marcus asked, narrowly avoiding a collision with an ice fragment. "Only through biological interference. I would need to alter my body chemistry significantly, which requires specific compounds I do not have. Energy beams sliced through space, missing the wandering star by meters." Marcus's heart pounded as he pushed the ship harder, weaving through the debris field with desperate skill. But he knew they couldn't keep this up forever. The Valthani ships were faster, more agile, designed for pursuit. "There's an abandoned mining station about 20 minutes from here," Marcus said, making a split-second decision. "If we can reach it, we might find the compounds you need in their old supply caches. These places used to stock all kinds of chemicals for processing." "They will not let us land," Seraphine said. But there was hope in her voice now. "Then we don't ask permission." Marcus pushed the wandering star to her limits, the old engines screaming in protest. Behind them, the Valthani ships maintained their pursuit, occasionally firing warning shots. They clearly wanted to capture Seraphine alive, which was the only reason. Marcus and his ship were still intact. The mining station appeared on their sensors, a sprawling complex of interconnected structures clinging to a massive asteroid. Most of it was dark, power long since depleted, but Marcus identified a still intact hangar bay. He aimed straight for it. "Marcus, that opening is too small." Seraphine gripped her seat. "It'll fit, probably." The wandering star screamed through the hangar entrance with mere centimeters to spare, metal scraping against metal in a shower of sparks. Marcus immediately killed the engines and sealed the bay doors behind them, activating the station's emergency lockdown protocols from the ship's computer. "That will hold them for maybe 10 minutes, Marcus said, already unstrapping. "We need to move." They ran through the darkened corridors of the mining station, Marcus's flashlight cutting through the gloom. The air was stale but breathable, maintained by automated systems that had continued functioning long after the miners abandoned the place. Seraphine moved with surprising grace, despite her weakened state, her bioluminescent patterns providing additional light. They found the medical supply cache 3 levels down. Marcus forced open the locked cabinet and began sorting through containers, reading labels. "What exactly do you need?" Seraphine examined the compounds with practiced efficiency. "This one, it will interfere with the tracer signal." "But Marcus, you must understand what this means. If I take this, I sever the last connection to my people. The Velfani collective will no longer sense me at all. I will truly become an exile with no possibility of return." Marcus stopped and looked at her. In the dim light, her alien features seemed less strange and more familiar. He had spent 3 days learning about her, laughing with her, sharing grief, and slowly discovering that companionship could exist even in the depths of loss. "Is that what you want?" he asked gently. "To be able to return someday?" Seraphine met his gaze, her starfield eyes luminous. "I thought I did. When I first fled, I hoped they would realize their cruelty and change. But now I understand they cannot change. Their fear of emotion is too deeply rooted. And more importantly, I have found something unexpected." "What's that?" "Someone who understands that remembering is not weakness," Seraphine said softly. "Someone who has shown me more kindness in 3 days than my people showed me in cycles. You have given me shelter, Marcus Webb, not just from the enforcers, but from the loneliness that threatened to consume me." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You've given me something too. I didn't realize how isolated I'd become until you showed up in that rain. I thought I wanted to be alone with my memories. But maybe what I really needed was someone who understood why those memories matter." Seraphine reached out and touched his face, her cool fingers tracing his jawline. The gesture was intimate, tentative, exploring. "Is this acceptable? Among humans?" "Very acceptable," Marcus whispered. He covered her hand with his own and slowly leaned forward. Their kiss was gentle, exploratory, to different beings learning each other's rhythms. Her lips were cool and soft, and he tasted something like starlight and electricity. When they pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Seraphine's bioluminescent patterns were blazing bright, pulsing in complex rhythms Marcus had never seen before. "Is that a good sign?" he asked, smiling. "Among my people, such displays indicate strong emotion," Seraphine replied, her own smile radiant. "The enforcers would call it a symptom of contamination. I call it hope." The sound of metal tearing interrupted the moment. The enforcers were breaking through. "Time to go," Marcus said. Seraphine quickly prepared the chemical compound and injected it. Almost immediately, her patterns dimmed and steadied. The tracer was blocked. They ran back through the station, but the enforcers had already breached the hangar. 2 tall, elegant Velfani stood between them and the wandering star, their features similar to Seraphine's, but cold, emotionless. They wore gray uniforms that seemed to absorb light, and their eyes were empty black voids without any of the stellar warmth that made Seraphine's eyes so captivating. "Seraphine," one of them spoke, voice flat and mechanical through the translator. You have violated collective law. Return with us for cleansing, and the human will not be harmed. No, Seraphine said, stepping forward. I will not forget Talvin. I will not forget what it means to love and to grieve. Then you are lost to us, the second enforcer said. And you, human, are contaminated by association. Both of you will be returned for processing. Marcus moved to stand beside Seraphine, taking her hand. You know what I think? I think you're terrified of what she represents. Not because grief is dangerous, but because it's powerful. It connects us across species, across differences. And that connection threatens your control. The enforcers raised their weapons, energy building at the barrels. But Marcus had spent 3 days learning about the Wandering Star's cargo, and he'd loaded her with mining explosives before this run. His hand was already on the detonator remote. One more step and I blow the support columns, he said calmly. This whole section collapses. You might survive. We definitely won't. But then again, we've both already decided some things are worth dying for. The enforcers froze, calculating. Their perfect logic was analyzing probabilities, weighing outcomes. You would truly die rather than undergo cleansing? One of them asked. We would die rather than forget how to love, Seraphine answered, squeezing Marcus's hand. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, almost imperceptibly, the enforcers lowered their weapons. You are no longer Velthani, the first one said. You are already dead to us. They turned and left, their footsteps echoing through the empty station. New Haven exceeded their expectations in every way. The colony was a thriving community of over 50,000 beings, representing dozens of species. Humans worked alongside Talaxians, Rigelians, and even a few other Velthani exiles who had rejected the emotional suppression of their homeworld. The architecture reflected this diversity: buildings that combined straight human lines with organic alien curves, creating an aesthetic that was both familiar and wonderfully strange. Marcus and Seraphine secured a small apartment in the artisan district, a cozy space with large windows overlooking a plaza where musicians and artists performed daily. It was Seraphine who chose the location, drawn by the constant presence of music that reminded her of Talvin without making her. Sad, I can honor his memory and build anew. Life, she explained to Marcus as they moved their few possessions into the apartment. Here I can do both. Marcus found work quickly. His skills as a pilot were in demand, and the colony needed reliable freight runners to maintain supply lines with other settlements. But he no longer took extended solo runs. Instead, he signed on for local routes that brought him home every few days. Being alone had lost its appeal. Seraphine discovered a community of artists who welcomed her eagerly. She began creating hybrid music combining Velthani harmonic techniques with human instrumentation. Her first public performance drew a crowd of hundreds, many of whom wept openly at the beauty of her songs. When she finished and bowed, she looked directly at Marcus in the audience, and her smile was radiant. 3 months after their arrival, Marcus woke to find Seraphine standing at the window, her bioluminescent patterns dancing in complex sequences. Morning light streamed through the glass, making her translucent skin seem to glow. What are you thinking about? He asked, joining her and wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. About how different my life is now, Seraphine replied, leaning back against him. About how terrified I was that day in the rain when you found me. I thought I had lost everything Talvin, my home, my purpose. I could not imagine a future that held anything but emptiness. And now? Now I understand that loss does not erase possibility. It transforms it. She turned in his arms to face him. I will always carry Talvin with me. His music, his love, his belief that emotion makes us stronger, not weaker. But I also carry you now, Marcus. Your kindness, your courage, your willingness to stand against those who would make us forget what matters most. Marcus kissed her softly. Their intimacy had deepened over the months, becoming as natural as breathing. They had learned to navigate their physical differences with patience and humor, discovering that love transcended biology. Sometimes they made love with passionate intensity, other times with gentle tenderness. Each encounter felt like a celebration of their survival, their choice to remember and to move forward together. "I have something to show you," Seraphine said, pulling away with mysterious excitement. She led him to the workspace she had set up in their apartment's second room, where musical instruments and recording equipment cluttered every surface. "I have been working on a special composition. It combines one of Talvin's melodies with a human song that reminded me of your stories about Emma and Claire." She activated a playback device, and music filled the room. It was heartbreakingly beautiful alien harmonics, intertwined with a piano melody that Marcus recognized as Claire's favorite lullaby. The two songs shouldn't have worked together, but somehow they did, creating something entirely new while honoring what had been. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "It's perfect," he whispered. "It is called Those Who Remain," Seraphine explained, her own eyes glowing with emotion. "It is about how the living carry the dead forward, how memory becomes a bridge between past and future. I wanted to honor all four of them, Talvin and Emma and Claire, and everyone else who shaped us, but is no longer here." Marcus pulled her close, holding her as they listened to the rest of the composition. When it ended, they stood together in silence, surrounded by the evidence of their blended lives, Velthani art beside human photographs, alien instruments next to Earth memorabilia. "Will you marry me?" Marcus asked suddenly. The question surprised even him, but the moment it left his lips, he knew it was right. "I know our species have different traditions, different concepts of partnership, but I want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours. That we chose each other despite everything that tried to keep us apart." Seraphine's bioluminescent patterns exploded into the most complex, beautiful display Marcus had ever seen, spirals and waves and bursts of light that illuminated the entire room. "Yes," she breathed. "Among the Velthani, bonding is eternal, meant to happen only once. But I am no longer truly Velthani, and you have taught me that love can grow and change and appear again when we think it is lost forever. Yes, Marcus Webb, I will marry you." They were married 3 weeks later in the plaza outside their apartment, surrounded by friends from a dozen worlds. The ceremony combined human and Velthani elements, exchanged rings and harmonized vows, spoken promises and bioluminescent declarations. When Marcus kissed Seraphine at the ceremony's conclusion, the crowd erupted in cheers and musical salutes that echoed across the colony. That night, alone in their apartment, they made love with a new intensity, as if their official binding had unlocked something deeper between them. Seraphine's patterns blazed like supernovas as they moved together, and Marcus felt more complete than he had in years. This was not replacement or forgetting, it was expansion, the recognition that the heart could hold multiple loves without diminishing any of them.